Welcome back to the Sableize YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing another deck profile based on the winning list from Jimmy Pendarvis at Roanoke Regionals, which is Gardevoir, Swampert with Solgaleo and Ninetales. So a bit of a complex deck here, but today I'm joined by Lou Hopkins for the first time on the channel. How are you going today, Lou?
Good, mate. Good to be here.
That's good. What do you think of this Gardevoir deck that's been getting a bit of hype recently?
I think the deck is extremely solid, to be honest. Guardy has proven to be one of the most powerful cards ever since its release, and now just with the addition of Solgaleo to give that immunity to weakness, it just makes the deck just that much better. So I definitely think it was a good call by Jimmy to play it. Yeah,
there are a lot of other top US players who are playing this list as well, and it was first popularised, I think, by the current world champion Robin Schultz at the Latin American International Championship. So a lot of good players are playing this deck right now. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. But with that, I think we're going to get right into the list. So to start things off, we have 3 copies of Ralts, 1 copy of Curlier, and 3 copies of Gardevoir GX. So obviously this is the main Pokemon in the deck. It's not the only main Pokemon, but it is the main attacker. You really want to have 1 to 2 Guardy in play most games. If you can get more, obviously that's even better. But its Secret Spring ability is just super strong for setting up pretty much all of your attackers, especially its Infinite Force attack, which, especially with some of the special energy we'll talk about later, can get very powerful really quickly. And of course, it's got a very strong GX attack in Twilight, and we actually saw a lot of stall decks, such as Zoro Control doing well recently, and being able to shuffle 10 cards from your discard pile back into your deck is just so strong against any of these mill decks.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, with cards like Gardevoir still roaming around a little bit, which obviously capitalizes on those items, you just having that attack to be able to shuffle as many resources back into the deck is just so crucial, and why Guardy is obviously a very strong card. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. Gardevoir and Gardevoir were actually pretty big decks around this time last year, I think, at the European International Championships, where you would often see players using Twilight to get around that Trash Lance attack.
Yeah, that's it.
On to the next main Pokemon, we have a 2/1/2 line of the new Swampert from Celestial Storm. Now this is a very interesting card that people have been playing. You might ask, why would you play Swampert when you can play Zoroark GX? It's a stage 1, it does almost the same thing, but Swampert actually offers quite a lot more. Obviously Power Draw, allowing you to draw 3 cards instead of 2, it doesn't sound like a big difference, but it really stacks up throughout the game. And Hydro Pump is actually a pretty strong attack when you have access to Super Boost energy, which we'll talk about a bit later. But all of a sudden, the water typing on Swampert can give you a good matchup against Blacephalon and a lot of other strong decks in the current format.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And having the Swampert being that stage 2 as well, obviously we're playing Rare Candy in the deck, which we'll discuss a bit later. But it's basically just free to actually run in the deck, so you're not having to splash that stage 2 in a deck that actually doesn't need it. So, but exactly what you said, where it's giving you that draw 3 cards, which is just so big to be able to draw as much as you can. And having that water, you can take on those Blacephalon decks and just put out huge amounts of damage, which is just great for this deck.
Yeah, definitely. A Swampert definitely seems like a very important card in this deck for setting up, because it really doesn't play that many other consistency cards. But one consistency card it is playing is a 2/2 line of Alolan Ninetales GX, which is a card we've been seeing so much of recently. It's pretty much being played in almost every single Stage 2 deck we see at the moment, with its Mysterious Guidance ability, allowing you to set up Stage 2s reliably, being able to search out rare candies, but also just having strong attacks around the board, which you can power up easily with Secret Spring, and also, of course, being able to set up some really cool plays with other niche items which people can tech into lists now.
Yeah, and that's just it. And being a fairy type as well, it obviously fits perfectly into this Guardy list, just naturally, to be honest. But having that ability to get 2 items from your deck into your hand is so crucial when you can go get double Rare Candy after playing both of the Beacon Vulpixes, where you can get the cards you need, like the Guardies, to your hand, and then search out the Rare Candies as well. It's just so consistent in this list, and I think the card's great. I knew that when it got spoiled, I had to get my hands on it. It's such an amazing card.
Yeah, it definitely was one of the, if not the best card to come out of Lost Thunder. It's seen so much success already, and we are only a few weeks into the Lost Thunder format. And I didn't even remember to talk about Vulpix. It's just an incredible synergy, not only with Ninetales, but just in general for setting up stage 2s, being able to search for any 2 Pokemon just brings the consistency of your deck up a lot. You're either going to get a 3 Pokemon to hand, or your opponent's just going to mash out and give you a fresh set of cards to look at.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, I'll often find myself starting a Ralts or like a Mudkip or something like that, and trying to actually retreat that out of the active to get that Vulpix in, so we can use that beacon ability just to get those Pokemon to our hand. We would normally search out a Ninetales or the Gardevoir if we already have that rare candy in our hand, just to really set up for the next turn.
Every Pokemon in this deck, or at least every basic Pokemon, does have only 1 retreat cost, so it's incredibly easy to get into that beacon attack really easily on the first turn. But next up we have a 101 line of Solgaleo GX, and this isn't the typical Solgaleo. This is the brand new promo Solgaleo with the Shining Main ability to remove all of your Pokemon's weakness, and of course Turbo Strike for a double colorless, allowing you to attach 2 basic energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Very similar to a lot of other attacks we've seen of similar names, such as Turbo Bolt from Mega Manetric in the previous format, where you can just discard energy at will, get them back with Solgaleo, and do a respectable amount of damage for 1 energy.
Yeah, that's just it. And I mean, with this deck playing double colorless energy, it's just so easy to power up such a powerful attacker, and giving you that no weakness ability as well. It's just huge for Gardevoir when there's Solgaleo running around, so Solgaleo Ninetales. There's still Metagross being a fraction of play there, and there's also the Dustman and Cosmo, which are all obviously metal decks, which Gardevoir is weak to. So to give yourself no weakness is just such a huge thing. Once again, being a stage 2, it fits perfectly into the deck because it's free with rare candy.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the deck is asking for a lot, playing 3 different stage 2 lines, but it really isn't as bad as you would think, with the ability to search them out with a wall and Ninetales whenever you need to. And it is worth noting as well that Solgaleo is fairly crucial to winning any Gardevoir mirror match you play against. If you verse a Gardevoir and they've got a Solgaleo and you don't, it's probably going to be a very one-sided game. So Solgaleo, kind of almost a staple in this deck now because of the way people are playing it.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Alright, so no surprise, the next card we're going to talk about is 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX. Now, this deck doesn't actually play that many different supporter cards, but the main reason I think this plays Lele is simply to almost guarantee that you start with a Professor Elm's Lecture, which every basic Pokemon that you want to be able to search for in this deck has 60 or less HP, and you really, really need to be able to start with that card for this deck to work properly, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, with Bridget being so crucial in last year's metagame, just to be able to have your bench set up perfectly for your turn 2, we've now got Elm, which is our go-to card for turn 1. You really need to set that up. So you need, a couple of Vulpixes down, a couple of Ralts down, so that your turn 2 can be that much more consistent. And that's what we were talking about before, where, it is a little bit hard with the amount of actual stage 2s we're playing. But with Professor Elm and Lele and Ultra Balls, there's just so much we can do to try and make sure that turn 2 is as good as we can get it.
For sure. Now, the last Pokemon we have in this list is a single copy of Ditto Prison, which realistically is there just to smooth out all the different lines you're playing. Anytime you're playing more than one important evolution line, I think Ditto is almost an auto-inclusion. And it's honestly the main reason why this deck is running the copies of Kirlia and Marshtomp, because when you're playing 3 different stage 2s that you possibly want multiple of in play, and you only have 2 candy, you have to be able to find them another way, and the Kirlia and the Marshtomp offers exactly that.
Yeah, that's it. And with only having 40 HP, it fits perfectly with the Elm as well. So if you are missing a piece of that line, you're missing that one of Cosmog, or you need that one extra Vulpix on the bench so you can get that second Ninetales down, but Ditto just provides that excellent basic type that you need.
Yeah, it is worth noting that it doesn't work for Cosmog because this list isn't playing Cosmog, it is only playing the other 2 stage ones. But it is super important for getting that Ninetales. If the active Vulpix you use Beacon with gets knocked out, you can just evolve your bench Ditto into a Ninetales to swap your candies, or if the Vulpix in the active survives, the Ditto can become whatever you need it to be, whether it's a Marshtomp or a Curler, so plenty of options there. But with that Pokemon line out of the way, let's move on to the supporter line, which is a very, very basic, straightforward supporter line. So we'll start off with the 4 Professor Elm's Lecture, which we've already talked about, so we don't need to go into this one in too much detail, of course, but it really is a card that's a 4-off copy, mainly because obviously you need to start with it, but also Swampert's Power Draw just makes every late game Elm no longer a dead card that just sits in your hand, but now you can make use of them to trade them away.
That's it. great card you need 4 of, and as you just Swampert having that discard to draw ability, the card's never dead.
Yeah, I typically don't like playing 4 copies of Elm in any deck that doesn't run Zoroark, and this obviously with Swampert is the only exception to that rule of mine where you can very easily just get rid of them in the late game. But obviously besides 4 Elm, we have 4 copies of Cynthia, which is an equally important supporter in my opinion, obviously allowing you to refresh your hand. It is the only strong draw supporter in this list, so you really are reliant on being able to hit these Cynthias when you need to, so obviously Tapu Lele helping to get those when you need them is a big deal.
Yeah, arguably the best draw supporter in the game in Cynthia. This deck, with the amount of different lines that you're actually playing, can get a bit clunky if you're drawing too many of the top end pieces or too many of the little pieces. So Cynthia is just great to basically get your hand back to where you need it to be.
Yeah. Now the last of the straightforward supporters in this list is 3 copies of Guzman. Obviously, don't need to talk too much about why this deck is playing Guzman. It's a staple card in pretty much every deck, and especially with that Solgaleo, you can use Guzman to take down a weaker target and still accelerate energy to your Gardevoir, allowing you to make sure you're able to get those big knockouts when you need them on the right Pokemon.
That's it. Not too much to say about this card, to be honest. It's just
exactly.
So
it's not a card that you'd want to realistically cut to below 3, but I think adding a 4th would probably be unnecessary. So 3 seems like the right number of Guzman to play. Now the last supporter we have in this list is a single copy of Lily, which might seem a bit weird considering how much you want to play Elm on your first turn instead of Lily, and Lily's main use is to be able to use it on the first turn to draw up to 8 cards. But when you only have 4 copies of Cynthia, it really does help to have that extra copy of Lily in your deck to make sure you don't kind of run a drought, and if you run out of Swamperts in play, the Lily can kind of add just a little bit of extra draw to your deck to try and set another one up.
That's it, and sometimes you actually don't want to shuffle your deck. You might be holding the perfect hand of double rare candy, double Guardy, something like that, and you don't want to have to shuffle that away after you've just had this amazing hand. So it is good to be able to just play that out, Lily what you need, and go off from there. So I think the inclusion of 1 is perfect.
Yeah. This list, this Lily, I think, was not actually present in quite a lot of the lists that were played in Roanoke this weekend, so it's definitely not a necessary card in the list, but definitely a card that you can easily add to the deck to kind of improve some of its draw options. But that is it for the supporter line. We'll move on now to the item cards, where once again it's actually fairly straightforward for the most part. We're starting with 4 Ultra Ball, which I don't think we really need to discuss at all. It's a necessary card for setting up your board, getting turn 1 Lele, getting Ninetales turn 2 Swampert. You can get obviously any Pokemon in your deck. It's just such a good card. So I don't think we really need to talk about that at all. So we'll skip straight ahead to 4 Rare Candy, which once again doesn't really need much explanation, but it does have a bit more of a use in this deck than obviously a lot of other Stage 2 decks, which might only be playing 3 Rare Candy. We're trying to set up so many different Stage 2s in this list that you can't really afford to play less than 4, I think. Would you agree with that, Lou?
Absolutely, and the fact is that if you're playing 3 and you prize 1, you're only down to 2 in that main deck now, and I feel like just having that 4th one there gives you that peace of mind that you're always going to be able to get at least 2 to 3 set up in that match.
For sure. It's also nice to have that luxury of not having to use Ninetales to search for Rare Candy every time. Sometimes you just want to have it in your hand already and be able to use Ninetales for other cards, such as these 2 choice bands here in the list, which are quite important for some of the maths on a lot of these Pokemon. Specifically, the one that comes to mind the most is on the Solgaleo GX, being able to 2-hit other Solgaleo GXs seems really important in the mirror match, because usually you're just 10 short of being able to get that 2-hit.
Yeah, that's it, and once again, we talk about the crucial numbers when it comes to this game at the moment. Something as simple as with the Ninetales doing 70-30, you put the choice band on there, you're now hitting 100, which will be 200 on a Rayquaza, which is enough to one-shot that one there, and obviously with the Solgaleo hitting those perfect numbers as well.
Yeah, there's so many uses for this deck. I don't think that there is a single Pokemon that choice band is bad on in this deck. Even Tapu Lele can have quite a strong impact with the help of Choice Band and Secret Spring can get strong really easily, and of course, it kind of just works as an extra fairy energy for Gardevoir's attack. You don't really need to use Secret Spring every time. If you got a Choice Band, it does effectively the same thing.
That's right.
We'll move on to the next item of choice here, which is 2 copies of Max Potion, which is a card we saw a lot of in Gardevoir lists previously, back in the last time that this deck was popular, because you could obviously attack with a Gardevoir that only requires a little bit of energy. You can get the energy back really easily using Solgaleo, and of course you can Twilight these Max Potions in to get almost unlimited number of healing options thanks to Max Potion Twilight or using Solgaleo GX's Prominence GX.
That's it, and you can almost turn this deck into a little bit of a where you don't need to just throw all the energies onto the Gardevoir all the time. You can just have 1 or 2 on there, get that half, 3/4 hit damage, Max Potion off next turn, and finish the job. And as you said, with that Twilight, just being able to shuffle resources back in and then reattaching it again, it's just so crucial to be able to have as much utility as possible. And I feel like Max Potion just really gives you that peace of mind.
Yeah, it seems like a card that's especially useful in the mirror match. If you're able to get Solgaleo out, removing Wink's Gardevoir makes it incredibly hard to knock out, and it also helps against decks like Malamar. There's realistically not many decks it doesn't help against, besides maybe Blacephalon and GX, but even then, there's never really a bad time to have a Max Potion when you've got damage on the board.
That's it.
Alright, so we'll move on to the last item card in this list, which is 1 copy of Timer Ball. Now, Timer Ball is a card we typically see in pretty much any deck that plays Alolan Ninetales GX, but for this deck specifically, seeing only 1 Timer Ball is a little concerning to me. What do you think of this, Lou?
I think that Timer Ball is both, phenomenal in some aspects and just an absolute garbage card in the next. But to see 1 really concerns me. Obviously, the list we're looking at is very tight. There isn't a whole lot of movement we can actually do in this list. So I can understand why there is only the 1 in here. But generally, I like to see between 2 to 3 in the list. Sometimes 4, depending on what kind of version you're playing. But yeah, 1 doesn't seem the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I do think that you're right in saying the only reason this list is playing less than 2 is because it can't fit any more than that. And looking at the list, I don't really see much space for it either. All the Pokemon line is incredibly important, and the items and supporters don't really have many tech options there. It's pretty much just which card you need to set up, and that's all there is. So Time Ball is a one-off count. While annoying, I think it is enough to get the ball rolling and set up your Pokemon. Once you got a Swampert in play, the rest of your Pokemon kind of eventually just come naturally.
Yep.
So the last trainer card we have in this list is 2 copies of the Stadium Brooklet Hill. Now, Brooklet has multiple purposes, in that obviously this list is not playing any copies of Field Blower, so it gives you an out to removing your opponent's stadiums, while also acting almost like a nest ball, just allowing you to get that 1 extra Pokemon onto your bench, obviously only able to get Mudkip or Vulpix, but when you're using Elm, you can just make sure you take the Pokemon which aren't water that you need, and then Brooklet for the last copy, which will set you up nicely with 4 to 5 of your baby basic Pokemon, which you really need right at the beginning of the game.
And that's just it, and you basically covered everything. If you get a first turn Elm off where you're hunting 1 or 2 Vulpixes and or 1 or 2 Routes, you get the Brooklet out, and you've got your Mudkip as well to get your Swampert set up. So, as you said, it's just multiple uses. Not only is it acting as that almost extra copy of Elm as such, where you're getting that 4 Pokemon down, but you are replacing the stadiums, which can be huge, especially if you're trying to versus a deck like Blacephalon, where they're playing Ultra Space or Heat Factory or something like that. You just need to be able to cut them off as much as possible. So this card is just phenomenal instead.
Yeah, it really seems to me like a card you're never really upset to see. It's like, whenever Brooklet Hill is in play, it's really just super useful to have a free search every turn. And if it's not in play, then at least if your opponent has a stadium in play, at least you're getting rid of that, even if you don't need the effect.
That's it.
So that will bring us finally to the last part of this deck list, which is the energy cards. So this list plays a total of 7 Fairy Energy, 4 Double Colorless Energy, and the extra spicy single copy of Super Boost Energy Prison. So Super Boost has so many uses in this deck, especially since you're naturally planning on setting up 3 to 4 Stage 2s anyway. The main uses obviously is Gardevoir GX and Swampert. It's not too useful on the Solgaleo, but when Super Boost came out, to be honest, the one card that kept coming into my mind was, this is really good for Gardevoir GX. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be a little bit risky. You have to set up multiple stage 2s, which can be a little bit frustrating if your basics are getting targeted down too early. But if you can get those stage 2s into play as quickly as possible, Super Boost is so relevant. A 1 energy attachment on Gardevoir to do 120 damage is huge, and on the Swampert as well, it just puts in phenomenal work, so I definitely love the addition of it.
Yeah, the Super Boost on the Swampert is really strong because obviously it counts as 4 water energy while attached to Swampert, and Hydro Pump all of a sudden has a base of, I think it's 160 damage with the Super Boost energy in play. Chuck a Choice Band on, you're knocking out most basic GXs in the format, and the water typing, as we already mentioned, is really strong against decks like the Cephaloon. Having a non-EX attacker is always a good thing to have, and when your support Pokemon happens to be a really good attacker as well, that's always just a bonus.
Absolutely, and you said it all there.
So obviously we're playing 4 copies of Double Colorless Energy, mainly for Gardevoir and Solgaleo. Solgaleo obviously needing the Double Colorless to, or to Fairy of course, but the Double Colorless is definitely a lot cleaner, allows you to max potion and power up with Solgaleo in the same turn to keep that alive in matchups where it's really important. And obviously it counts as 2 energy for Gardevoir's Infinite Force, which is really strong in building up big attacks with Gardevoir.
Yeah, and I feel like in a deck like this, it's just almost a given to have to play Double Colorless Energy when you can attach to a Gardevoir, Secret Spring on, and then that's 90 damage right there, just with your own energy, let alone your opponent's. So 2 energy attachments for 90 damage, that seems huge. And as you just said, with the Solgaleo having the Double Colorless for 120, that's 240 on your opponent's Gardevoirs or Fairies or anything like that, which is just so simple, you know, and the ability to be able to recycle those energies back if you do lose them through early knockouts or you have to discard them through your Ultra Balls or something. It's just, yeah, way too good. So I think you have to play 4 Double Colors in this deck. Yeah,
I would agree. Now, one of the cards that saw quite a lot of play over in Roanoke was actually one copy of Energy Lotto, which, to me, it's the main draw for playing that card is it gives you a much higher out of playing the Super Boost energy when you need it, and of course it becomes a way that you can use Ninetales' Mysterious Guidance to, in a way, almost search for an energy card, which obviously is one of the only things you can't usually search for with this deck. What do you think of the inclusion of Energy Lotto in this list?
I think it's fine. The issue that I can see with Energy Lotto, like any sort of chance cards like Great Ball or something like that, is that once again, it does have the opportunity to actually miss, which isn't the greatest, in my opinion, when you can play cards like Lily to draw 6 cards, Cynthia to shuffle in and draw 6, where those are natural drawing abilities anyway. And with the Swampert, in my opinion, that's just enough draw power to find it that way, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that I would much rather see an extra consistency card, such as the second Time Ball, or in this case we've gone with the Lily over the copy of Energy Lotto. It does seem like a luxury, because we are playing a fairly high energy count, but with the help of Swampert and a draw supporter, you'd usually be able to find yourself into an energy, I think. But yeah, that does make up the 60 card list that we're going to be featuring this week. Do check back soon, as we will be playing a bunch of games with this deck in the next few days. Thank you very much for joining me today, Lou. It was a pleasure having you on the channel.
No worries, mate. It's a good deck, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, very, very much is a good deck, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this over the next coming weeks, and possibly even one of the top decks going into the upcoming Brisbane Regional Championships next weekend. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and thanks once again, Lou, for joining me today. This was the Gardevoir Swampert Solgaleo deck with Ninetales, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.